Hey everybody, Johnny Codes back here with part 3 of building the Dungeon Master Assistant. In the last video, we finally fully integrated our post endpoint, so we can uh, pass a work, place an NPC works, and any additional information we want to the OpenAI API. Return it back, save it to our database, and return a JSON response with that data. So what that looks like, just to catch you up, is we pass in, they work at Gnome Depot and they are chaotic evil. Um, OpenAI creates an NPC for us. In this case, it's Gumball Gear Spinner and Gnome with a personality, physical description, and role-playing tips. And now that is saved to our database, and we get this output uh, that can communicate with our front end to display this NPC data to be able to use in our campaigns. In this video, we're going to expand and create the full RESTful architecture of this to include get, puts, deletes, and we've already done the post. So let's get started with that. And you'll notice this code's a little bit different. I've been trying to do two separate folders for the YouTube videos, and I don't really like that. So what I'm gonna go over, and at worst, this is gonna be a knowledge repository for me to go back and reteach myself if I ever forget this stuff. So what we have here now in our router, we'll start with the first router. So we did this post route in the last video. So now let's get a list of all of the NPCs that we have in our database. So say we've made 100 NPCs. This is going to return a list back of all of those NPCs that we have. So what we have to do is we use our router object that we have from up top, and this is going to be a GET request. And this is going to be the URL endpoint /API /NPC level 1 characters. Then we get to create our function. It's going to be async, and we're going to name this function get all NPC level 1 characters. We're going to use that same repo that we created in the last episode, the NPC creation repo, to do this. We're going to create a method in there, get all NPC level 1 characters. So let's go to that. So you'll see this takes us to our queries folder, our NPC creation repo, and we're going to get all of our NPC level 1s. Now, just like the post request, we have to start off with a connection to our database because this is how our API, or this is how FastAPI communicates with the Postgres database. So we use our pool connection, that's con, we get the cursor as DB, and this is really easy SQL statement query to get it. So we start off with the triple quotes and end it with the triple quotes. So we're going to select all from NPC level 1. This is going to return everything from that is in that database and give it back to the front end. Here we had to create a new list, and we're going to we set that select all from NPC level 1 to result so that we can iterate over it because we got to create it, make it into the right model to put out to the front end. So for NPC and result.fetch all, so this is going to fetch all of all the records in our database. I have a print statement to make sure it's working. I believe I can delete that now. So this new list we need to append. We need to use that model that we created, the create NPC out model. And this fetch all returns all this data and so we need to digest it out of there. So our ID is going to be the 0th index of the result. The name's the first index, race is the second index, personality. All this comes back like that. So we get that data and set it to the fields of the model. And because our role-playing list is a list of role-playing tips, we need to call this get role-playing tips function, which is another get request or another SQL statement that we have to use. So we pass the database and the NPC ID, which we get from here. I could have just passed ID here as well. So we need the ID and tip, which were the two fields in that model that we created. From our role-playing tips table database, where our character ID is a variable, in our dependency list, we pass the NPC ID. So this gets put into there. So this is going to, from our role-playing tips, for this character, we're going to get the ID and tip, which, you could do an asterisk also, select all. But this is more explicit. So we're getting the ID and tip back. We need to make a list of role-playing tips. And then for the tips in the result, we need to create it into our model with the ID and the tip. So this puts it in the model and we return the role-playing tips. So this model with this data gets returned back into here. And this creates another dictionary object inside of this object. It creates this object inside of this list inside of the create NPC out model. And if you don't know what I mean by that, here's the list of role-playing tips, and then here are the dictionary or objects inside. So that's what we're looping over to get and put into our model. So this new list gets appended to that, and we just return this new list. So this endpoint returns a list of objects of all. It returns a list of NPC out objects. So we can go over here, refresh this page. And here's our endpoint, get all of our level 1 NPC level 1 characters. I only have one in here right now. So you can see we have Grumble Gear Spinner, who's a gnome with this personality, physical description, and role-playing tips. So that is how you create a list of all objects in a database. So the next thing we want to do is, what if we want this specific one specific NPC? Say on one page of our website we have a list of all of these NPC characters. And we click on Grumble Gear Spinner, and we want to go to a detail page and get all of the information about Grumble. So for that, we want to do another GET request. So we take our router, our GET, create another endpoint. We're going to do API/NPC level 1/ and here's some syntax that may be new to you. So this is essentially a variable. We're going to pass in an NPC ID to the endpoint. And this endpoint, when we go to it, is going to take that NPC ID and use it in our query to get the data for that. And we do want our response model to be that same create NPC out model. Notice up here we didn't have a response model because it's just a list, so we don't need to actually define that there. So in this GET request, we're going to call it get NPC level 1. So it's just going to get one NPC, and we're going to pass it this NPC ID from the route. And it is an integer. And again, we're going to pass the repo, the NPC creation repo. So we're going to go create a method in that repo to get this specific NPC. So this NPC is going to equal the repo that get NPC level 1, this method, and we're going to pass it the NPC ID from the URL. So we can go take a look at that method. So again, we're passing the NPC ID to it, and again, we have to make the connection to the database. We're going to set the result equal to this SQL statement. Select everything from NPC level 1 where the ID is equal to the NPC ID we pass in. So if the ID is 1, we get the NPC whose ID is 1. Because we only want one result, we use this .fetch1. Whereas up here when we created the list, we did fetch all. For this one, we will just want to fetch the first result. And if this NP exists, we will need to use that same create NPC out model because that is our response model. So we need to get the data, how we had it in that same one. Now I'm looking at it, we can go up and use this create NPC out function that we can do later. Go back and refactor that. But we can return this NPC out model with the ID, the name, the race, personality, and physical description. And again, so it returns a tuple, and each index of that tuple is a column in the database. So we have a column for ID, name, race, personality, physical description, and role-playing tips. Or rather, ID, name, race, personality, and physical description. In that tuple, we just set it the correct data to the correct data and pass that to the NPC model. Again, we have to do that same, use that same method, get role-playing tips, so that we can return the list of role-playing tips for this character. And if this NPC does not exist, we'll just return none. There's better error handling that we can do, but for now this works. So let's go try this out. So Grumble Gear Spinner has an ID of 1. So we can go to our endpoint, get NPC level 1. Let's first, we know Grumble Gear Spinner exists, so we can execute this. And see, we get Grumble Gear Spinner with the ID of 1. Now let's try to get an NPC that doesn't exist. We get a 500 internal server error, which we can go back and do some exceptions or error handling so that we don't just get a random 500 response. But just to show you, we can do another character. Let's say they work at the potion shop. And let's say they are lawful good. And an elf. Make sure they're, yeah, they're an elf. So this is making a request to the OpenAI API to create our NPC character. Now see, we get Thalorn, who is an elf, and now they have an ID of 2. So if we go back down to this one, remember how we had a 500 internal server error? Well, now if we execute this again, we get Thalorn, who is an elf, which is the character we just created. So now we know we can create an NPC, save it into our database, and get all of the NPCs. Get all of the NPCs. See in this request, we get Grumble Gear Spinner and Thalorn back. So all of those API endpoints are working. And then we have a delete method. So in our router.delete, we're going to use kind of the same API endpoint. And these aren't the best routes. I need to go back and fix those, make it more consistent. But just like that, we can do the NPC ID, get the integer, use the repo, and we need to make a delete method. So with our connection, we execute. So we delete from our table. This is our SQL statement. Delete from NPC level 1, where the ID is the NPC that we want to delete. So we'll return true if it's deleted, but when this executes, it returns back true if it was deleted. Just returns back the string true in a. So if the row doesn't equal 1, which means we don't get that good response back, we return none. So that means there was nothing to actually delete. So we can go test this out. Let's go delete Forlorn, who had an ID of 2. Let's first try to delete somebody we don't have. So we get a null response because they don't exist. And I get a response of true here, which means it was a successful deletion. So if we go back and try to list all of our characters, we should only have gear spinner, and we do. So now we have our post to get request and the delete request. We are missing an update or a put request at the moment. That's going to come in the next video. It's a lot like the post request, but it's a little more complicated than this. So I want to dedicate a whole video to that. But in this video, we made a list of all the NPCs that we have. We have a method to get a specific NPC and all the data that relates to them. And we have a way to delete all the NPCs that exist, to delete a specific NPC. We don't want to delete them all. I mean, we could, but we're 3/4 of the way there. We have our push, we have our create, read, up, and delete methods. We need our update, put, request. That'll come in the next video. So catch you in the next video.